So Josh says, once our business is officially established, what is your advice on opening a business bank account? And if there is a specific bank account you recommend using? I know you've covered credit cards specifically for cashback benefits, but how would or how does it fit within the framework of a business bank account? So that's a good question, Josh. Honestly, I don't recommend any specific bank account. I use Ally for my business bank account because it's online and I don't really ever go and manage it. I can literally just manage it online. How I basically do it is I have one card, right? I used to actually have a business credit card, and then I would have one business bank account, and anything that I spent on my business credit card would literally be a business expense, right? And everything that came into my business bank account would be income, right? And then I just had QuickBooks to manage that, and I literally set the parameters in QuickBooks Self-Employed that every expense obviously came off, and I'd categorize them as some of them were apps and software for Jungle Scout or Scan Unlimited and weekly and monthly subscriptions like that. Other ones were cost of goods when you're buying products and stuff like that, right? And then I'd also have the categories of income, right? Mercari, Poshmark, Amazon, eBay, and then obviously some affiliate revenue because I recommend some affiliate products in my course and stuff like that. And then I categorize them all, right? And it makes it really, really easy from that aspect because I just keep it simple. I just recommend one business bank account, and then you can also even use, it's probably even better, and it's what I do now, it's what I'm moving towards. So I can kind of focus on my cash flow aspect of exactly what's coming in and coming out every single month. And I take the variable of the business credit card out of it. I still have it. I just don't use it because I have enough cash flow constantly to just expense out of my business bank account. The whole thing I'm trying to say here is I don't think it honestly really matters what business bank account you use. And quite frankly, you can even use just a normal bank account and then use that as a business bank account if you don't feel like paying the fee. If you do go the business bank account route, I'd recommend just making sure that you have one that has a minimal fee and isn't hitting you with hidden transaction fees if you don't make enough transactions every single month. That's one mistake that I made in the past. I had all these hidden fees that if I didn't, spend enough that month or I didn't use my account enough that month. And that's just another headache that you don't want to have to deal with as a business owner. You don't have to be going down the checklist of did I make 3 transactions from here and did I use the AT? You don't want any of that stuff. So best advice is it doesn't matter what bank account you use or what bank, obviously. Just keep it simple, have one bank account, and then use something like QuickBooks Self-Employed to manage all your income and all your expenses, so you can literally look at it and literally see this is what you're bringing in every month, this is what you're spending, obviously, and you can even go as far as categorizing it as this is what you brought in from Amazon, this is what you brought in from eBay, from Mercari, Poshmark, etc. Right? So hope that helps, but honestly, best way is just keep it simple and use a software like QuickBooks to manage it. Don't overdo it. I see a lot of people have multiple PayPal accounts and multiple business accounts and multiple business bank accounts and multiple credit cards. Don't do that because then it gets complicated. Just keep it simple. Hope that helps answer your question. The next one is Phoebe says, hi, I have a question. If I resell a product on Amazon, should it have the same brand as the one they are selling, even if it is the same item? So obviously I already answered this question because it was from last week, and I said, yeah, same exact brand name, which, yeah, if you're selling, for example, if I source, I don't know, I always pull these up because they're sitting right here because they're my editing headphones. But if I source these logo iJoy headphones from Best Buy or literally anywhere, right? And I need to resell these on the same ASIN or the same, product identifier, it needs to be the same exact brand name, right? It needs to be the same logo, iJoy headphones, right? So if that's what you mean, then yes, it needs to be the same exact brand name. It can't be a knockoff brand or a similar brand or a generic brand, but the same thing. It has to be the same exact brand, right? So if that's what you're asking, then yes. But now thinking about it, reading it a second time, I hope that you weren't asking that, it has to be the same brand name as you have to be the same kind of seller name as the person that's on the listing when you're listing it to buy, right? If that's what you mean, then no, you're different sellers, right? So they have a completely different seller name than you. And if that's what you mean by brand name, which I don't think you do, but I just kind of wanted to cover in case you did, then yeah, obviously you're going to have a different seller name than the original seller that has the buy box when you list it, okay? So 2 different answers there. I hope that helps answer your question. If I confuse you, just rewind it a little bit, watch each individual answer, see which one is pertaining to you and your specific question, and then it would either be yes or no, depending, okay? And if you need any clarification, just ask another question on this video right here, and I'd love to clarify that for you. So that covers last week's questions. Let's move on to this week. So Mario says, is it difficult to get your first review when you initially start selling on Amazon? Seems like it could be a barrier of trust if you have no reviews, thus making it harder to get sales. Would you recommend matching the buy box still when starting off, or would you undercut the price to begin getting some sales velocity? Curious on your take. So good question, Mario. It sounds like you have reviews mixed up with feedback, right? So there's two different things. There's customer reviews on a product. On each product listing, there's like customer reviews for that specific product. And then there's also seller feedback. So it sounds like you're mixing up the two. You're not really, as like somebody that's doing reselling and online arbitrage, there's already an existing listing, right? So in that aspect, if that's what you're referring to, then you're not worried about the customer or the product reviews on that actual listing, right? You don't care about that, right? Assuming that there's at least one, and assuming that you're sourcing a listing that has, you know, some reviews, if you're talking about how your seller feedback fits into that, then it doesn't really matter, in my opinion. I would say get started. You know, you're gonna eventually accumulate feedback. You'll accumulate feedback as you start selling more. But most people, when they go to click the buy box, they're not checking the seller's feedback. Like, I never do that, and I don't think the majority of buyers do that either. So like, at no point in time, if you actually do win the buy box, will a buyer be concerned with your seller feedback? Most of the time, okay? Most of the time. Now, if you're in like the used like news or like the used, and somebody clicks over on used and they're looking at the different feedback ratings and like all the other competing sellers, then yeah, that might be an issue at that point. But most of the time you're going for, you know, you're gonna try to get the buy box if you're buying new or used stuff, especially if it's like a used books, there's still a buy box for the used book. So best answer for that is like, no, it doesn't really matter about your seller feedback. I wouldn't really worry about that initially. I would just say like, start selling things, and eventually, excuse me, you'll accumulate some seller feedback over time. The only time, or the only way that's actually gonna affect you in the beginning, is because you don't have a lot of feedback and because you don't have a lot of positive seller metrics. And this is not necessarily like just a feedback thing. This is just because you haven't sold a lot on your seller account. You're not gonna get the buy box as much compared to other sellers that have better seller metrics and better feedback, right? But ultimately, that's just one of the things that goes into who gets the buy box. The most important things are price and availability to customers, okay? So if you can hit the price home, right, and you match the price on the buy box, and you have the best availability to a customer, right, meaning like if yours is in like a New Jersey, warehouse or prep center, right? Or FBA center, excuse me, and the buyer somewhere local to Jersey, and the other person on the buy box that might have the buy box is competing with you on the same price, but their inventory is in like Texas or California, and the buyer is in New Jersey or in like PA or somewhere close, then obviously you have a greater chance to win the buy box because you have the same price as them, but your availability to the customer, Amazon's ability to deliver it to that customer through your actual product is a lot better, right? So in that aspect, you would probably win the buy box. Now, one of the other competing factors, like if all else is even and two sellers have the same price and the same availability to the customer, and all else is even, that's when seller feedback comes into play and seller metrics come into play. So it is, I'd be lying to you if I said it wasn't like, it wasn't a variable or a factor, but it's not one that you should focus on initially. It doesn't really matter all that much. People kind of build it up to matter a lot more than it actually does. So in short, don't focus on seller feedback, especially, I would say don't even focus on it ever really, but especially in the beginning, just focus on selling good products, building up your seller metrics, and you'll start winning the buy box more frequently at lower or at higher prices, excuse me, as well as accumulating seller feedback and seller metrics so that you can get ungated for other products, okay? Next one is, where do you get the boxes to send into FBA? So there's actually 4 questions in this question right here. So where do I get the boxes to send into FBA? You can do 2 things. You can either buy boxes online, you can buy big boxes, although that actually will kind of run you a decent amount of money when you actually buy big boxes in bulk like that. So what I do is I literally save all my Amazon boxes. If I'm ordering something for myself, I save it. If I'm ordering cashback products, coupon products, I save those boxes, right? And I literally break them down and I put them away. And another thing that I do is like when I order big liquidation pallets and big boxes from companies like that, I break those big boxes down and I save them, right? So then I ship all my items in those boxes that I already have, and it doesn't really matter what your boxes look like when you ship into FBA, right? The only time your boxes or what you're shipping in matters is like when you're shipping to customers directly via FBM, so not FBA on Amazon, eBay, Poshmark, and Mercari, but obviously your question is an FBA question. Next part of that question is, what is the maximum units you can send into FBA? Is there a limit? No, there's no limit. Then she says, how many times can you send inventory into FBA? Is there a limit? Again, no limit. You can send it as many times as you want. Then what are the box sizes you can use for FBA? Pretty much any box size. I think there is a limit, and you'll see it's very, very big though. You probably won't hit that limit. I forget the exact dimensions because I honestly don't think I've ever hit it, but just when you go into FBA, you can obviously Google like what's the biggest box dimension you can send into FBA, as well as like what's the biggest weight. There is a weight limit and a box size limit, but rarely will you hit the box size limit. Every once in a while, if you're shipping in like books or something heavy, which happens to me every once in a while, you will hit the weight limit, but that's okay. You can just break it down into another box. So I would just say Google that answer to be sure, and it should pop right up. But ultimately, you're rarely going to hit the box size limit, so I wouldn't even worry about it. The only time that you should worry about it is if you actually do hit it, and you will know that you hit that size limit because when you're actually inputting it in FBA, when you're initiating your shipment into FBA, it will literally go red in your columns, be like, you can't send a box this big. So if you don't hit it, which 99.9% chance if you're shipping normal items in, you won't hit the box size limit, don't even worry about it. But good questions. So next one is, what's a better solution to box my items? Instead of paying for a custom box, for example, if I was to ship a 50-inch keyboard, where can I find a box that would fit? So honestly, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't ever ship anything that big into FBA or ship anything that big to customers specifically on other platforms. I purposely, because I've done this for a long time, I know just firsthand to avoid trying to sell items that are heavy or trying to sell big items like that, because like your question right here, which is a great question, Jimmy, is like it's a hassle to kind of find a good box for that, and B, the shipping expense is going to be super high. I remember listing the way I learned this was like 10 years ago when I listed my bike on eBay, and like I sold that bike for, I think it was like at the time like $300 or $400, right? It was a BMX bike that I didn't use anymore. And I was like, sweet, like I just made like $300 or $400, right? But then obviously I learned like, okay, they take their fees, no big deal. But then I also learned it cost me like $150 to $200 to ship that bike, because I had to find a box big enough, and then obviously the weight and the size of the box is what I was charged for. So it practically cut my profit from like $400 or $350 all the way down to like $80 or $70, and I had to front the money to ship it, obviously, before I got paid. So that's kind of how I learned that lesson. So I'd say first and foremost, avoid trying to sell big things like that. Now, because you're obviously asking this, which indicates that you're already running into this problem, I would say you could probably, if you haven't sold it already, try not to sell it or try to return it. If you have sold it already, then you can probably try to find a custom box online. The best way, obviously, to do it if you don't want to find a custom box that's super cheap, is the cheapest way you could do it, is find bubble wrap, right? You can find you can buy big rolls of bubble wrap on Amazon, right? Wrap the keyboard up in bubble wrap, make sure it's secure, and then you can also find shipping paper. It looks like it's like brown shipping paper. If you need me to link it for you, link these two things for you, because I bought them in the past, you can literally just go into my Amazon orders, find the links and link them to you. Comment on this video and I'll be sure to link them to you, but you can use bubble wrap and then shipping paper, and then literally wrap the keyboard up in bubble wrap, and then wrap the bubble wrap up in shipping paper. Tape it like a present, honestly, and put the label on that shipping paper, and it will just look like a package that way, and then that will be the easiest way that you don't have to find a box. That's the cheapest for you, but ultimately, best advice would be try to avoid selling things like that in the future. Last one, Charles says, on eBay, I've recently had at least 3 buyers request to cancel their order shortly after the purchase. I'm guessing they found the same items for cheaper from another seller. Is there anything that can be done about that? I get that it's not worth risking a bad review if I don't honor their request. Should I just cancel the order, or should the customer put in the request to cancel? I'm trying to make sure I don't get penalized as a seller for canceling an order. So a lot of things here. That's very strange. You didn't really give me a time frame in what that was in. Also, you didn't really give me like how many items you listed and how many sales you've actually had, because like, let's say you had 3 canceled orders out of like a couple hundred sales, then that's not really that big of a deal, or that like that's kind of expected, right? Even like 100 sales, like 3 canceled orders, like not great, but still like pretty normal. That's only 3% of your orders, right? Now, if you sold 5 things and 3 of them were cancels, then that'd be a bigger indicator of like maybe something's wrong. But ultimately, right now, I'd probably just chalk it up to like a major coincidence, or, you know, that, like I said, you've sold enough and that's to be expected. I would chalk it up to a coincidence on this one. If it keeps happening, then we'll address it then. But because there's just so many factors that you didn't kind of give me for me to give you like the best answer here. Like, is it the same exact listing every time? That would be a big indicator that something's wrong with that listing or that product. Are they different products? Is it the same buyer every time? And so on and so forth, right? So I'm not exactly sure how those parameters fit into your sales and the canceled orders. Maybe if you want to add more onto this post right here on this video and you want to comment on this, I could, you know, better answer it for you. But from what you told me, obviously, no, don't ever cancel the order, right? So if you have to cancel the order for whatever reason, there is videos that I have on YouTube. There's also videos that I have in the course on what you should do instead of canceling orders. Basically ship out something very, very similar or something cheap. If you need me to link that, I'll link it to you. Let me know, comment below. But ultimately, first and foremost, don't ever cancel the order. But if the buyer's canceling the order, you know, I would just chalk it up to coincidence. If it's the same product, then that's an indicator that's something wrong with the product or the product listing. If it's the same buyer, then that's an indicator that that's a buyer issue and you should block that buyer because something fishy is going on there. But if it's random buyers and random products, then I would just, at the current time period, say chalk it up to coincidence, and then if it keeps happening, we'll address it then.